Prior to doing crime novels and being a screenwriter, Elmer Leonard did serial westerns, pulp western short stories, and this is one of them.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a movie that I think a lot of people who, when you hear 310 to Yuma, you think the 2007 film.
Especially you guys in your age group.
Well, I think there's a lot of people like that original film doesn't really carry a lot of weight, even though
I agree.
Bold Move, I think it's significantly better.
All right, let's talk about it. Elmer Leonard's short story 310 to Yuma gets on the big pictures. Let's talk about it.
Welcome back to the show. I'm perpetually late when I try to get on a train. Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. Loyal fans, thank you. Continue to support the show. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals and great content. And, of course, Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we're going to talk about 310 to Yuma with Glenn Ford and Van Heflin.
So, when notorious outlaw Ben Wade is captured in small-town Bisbee, a local down-on-his-luck farmer is tasked with secretly escorting him to Contention City to catch the train and put him away once and for all.
Okay, I'm going to say right now I'm really a fan man of Elmer Leonard's stuff. Anything he does, I just eat it up. And I do like the story. I like the concept. There's a little bit of staples of Elmer Leonard stories, even though it's a Western. I'm going to really do an unpopular opinion. I think Van Heflin and Glenn Ford should switch characters in this movie.
I hear that a lot from people about things like
I don't really.
Well, Glenn Ford being miscast is the big one I hear from people.
Yeah.
Because they said he couldn't play bad, and I think if you're looking at it through the lens of Elmore Leonard, he's miscast. He doesn't have that kind of intensity, the deviousness that you would associate with him.
Yeah.
But I think given the confines just of the movie itself, I think he works really well in this because he is likable and unlikable in equal measure.
All right.
But I do think Van Heflin, I always associate him as being a bad guy, and it's probably because of the movie Airport. So I know what you mean.
Yeah, the Airport movie, but also he was the dad in Shane. Mm-hmm. But I think that Van Heflin has that structure face of an outlaw guy, and he's weathered. And Glenn Ford's got to have this structure, kind of this family man, and maybe it's because I watched Superman too much that I see Glenn Ford. But moving on. Elmer Leonard loves bad guys. Mm-hmm. He writes them really well. They're really dumb bad guys, like Samuel L. Jackson and Jack T. Brown, who thinks they're smart. Or you have Chili Palmer, who's just kind of weasels his way into things. But here you have a very charismatic bad guy. Mm-hmm. He's not so much evil, but he just doesn't want to play by the rules.
Yeah.
And he's a hardcore womanizer.
That's what I think is interesting about Ben Wade as a character, is that most of the time when you write a villain, you write the villain thinking he's the hero. And I get the sensation that Ben Wade knows he is a bad guy, but he's okay with it. And he wants to find someone else who's okay with it too. He wants to have a family of people that are fine with it.
That fleshed out, you understand the ending to this.
Yeah.
Because when I initially watched, I didn't understand the ending to this, and maybe because I was in my 20s in college and I didn't know anything at the time. But if you understand that point of view, then you get the ending of why he goes along with this instead of...
Yeah, because it does come out of nowhere. The movie has an odd kind of structure in terms of how much time is spent with Emmy, played by Felicia Farr, because she doesn't really serve a ton of purpose in the narrative of it, but what she does during that scene in the saloon before he gets captured is so much character work, and it is still so engrossing. But it's just like you said, he's really good at writing two people talking in a room and making it more interesting than everything else.
Especially that story, right? Mm-hmm. And it's almost like the Joker. Ben Wade tells about these stories of I met you. So he must be lying his ass off. I don't think he went to San Francisco, but he's so convincing that. Maybe it is true. Maybe it's not. But either way, he's telling it to woo people. And I think he's far more interesting. Yeah, when he's talking, that even if he's lying, he's very slick to this.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And that's what makes his offer so interesting, because it's hard, too, within the confines of watching this movie decades after, over 100 years after it was set, to think about $200, which would actually be about $5,000 today to do the escort. And then the offer of the $7,000 to let him go would be roughly around $200,000 today. So when you really put that into the idea of being able to let a criminal go, and he's going to be fine with it, you're going to get 200 grand. You can save your farm, but you won't ever be able to look your kids in the eye again.
Yes, and that's the thing I think Elmer Leonard's always searching for is, where is your convictions? No, I mean, you can cheat on your wife, you can be a horrible person, but are you going to atone for it, correct it, or are you going to sink even lower based on the faults that you have?
Yeah.
And I think that's what all his stories are talking about: is, are you going to make things worse for yourself, or are you going to correct things, or is this going to get far more down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, and that goes back to something I really liked about Glenn Ford as our villain, is because he is such a smooth talker. I believe him more than I believe someone like if Van Heflin was playing the bad guy. I wouldn't believe him as much because I'd feel that mustache twirliness to him. That I think Glenn Ford, when he has the moment,
right, it feels like they have like two cameras on Glenn Ford's eyes. They make them watery, like you want to feel sorry for him, that he's maybe had a life that's so rough that he can't do anything.
But the moment when he turns to Dan and he says, "Hey, we actually used to have this plan of like knowing we'd get captured, we'd have one guy go to each town we could possibly be brought." Like as he explains it, it starts to unfurl in Dan's mind, and it started to work on me in that same kind of energy of like, oh no, like. That the idea that this movie is mostly two people in a room, and that it has that ability.
It's full exposition. It serves a purpose. You don't understand if it's genuine, but you don't understand if it possibly could be real. But you understand your character, like you're lying or I don't know if you're lying or not.
Yeah.
So it kind of serves multiple purposes of using that kind of exposition. Clever.
Yeah, and I think big props to Al Clark, who did the editing on the film. He also edited Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Right, I didn't think about that.
This is a 92-minute movie that feels like a short story. It's based on a short story, but it feels like one. And so often, I've seen movies based on short stories that feel like they were trying to be novels. Like, it feels like someone added a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we don't have enough backstory. We got to get into that.
Yeah, but how often have we seen a short story where it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes, the movie, and it's like, does it need to be? That's not, like, this movie has every scene serving a specific purpose for either character or plot, and when you get to the end, you feel like you've eaten a light meal and you're not stuffed.
Yeah, it's very well fleshed out, and you can see very early on that Elmer's got his writing down perfect. He doesn't give you a lot of details. He makes the action go. And I recommend read Out of Sight. That book flies, and it's interesting. He doesn't provide a lot of details or descriptions, but you get it right away. And this is kind of this. I read the short story for 3:10 to Yuma. Same thing. Dusky world, and all of a sudden you get it right then and there, and it flows into it.
Yeah, it seems like Delmer Daves, who directed the film, also did Dark Passage and Broken Arrow.
Fantastic movie, Dark Passage.
He had a sense of what the story was and how to accurately put that on the screen. It included making choices like a lot of films around this time were being shot with color, and they decided, no, we want to show the starkness. And specifically the drought. They actually used red filters on the black and white cameras to create a dried out look. And you can see that. And that I think they removed the filter for that last shot in the rain. And it really has an impact because of the limited color palette that you're working with.
You're right. Right. Wonderful dynamic, and it's very inspiring framing of it, because it feels like it's simple, just two guys in a room, but you move that camera around. It's not flat. The lighting is perfect. You get the intensity, and then you get the window, like maybe you want to put your head out the window, and it makes it just two guys who are mere reflections of what they don't want to be, dueling out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that it has that 2007 remake from James Mangold because it is such a simple story that Mangold acts this as a different way. I was not a big fan of that film when it came out in 2007, been meaning to rewatch it, but I felt like this would be more interesting to kind of come back to this film first.
But it's very stripped, the original one.
Yeah, so. And I think there's just a limited amount to play with, I guess, with this story that I think it's executed so perfectly here. It's not a film I really feel I need to see a second take on. Except I am curious about a 1993 film called Arctic Blue, which was a completely, like, they took the bare bones of this film and tried to work it into a different kind of setting. And Arctic Blue seems like an interesting film because it's so drastically different. Yeah. I probably do.
All right, so if you are a fan of Elmer Leonard stories, I highly recommend watch the original 3:10 to Yuma with Glenn Ford and Van Heflin.
Absolutely. And then do your best to get that song out of your head.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because it's still here, and I've been humming it all day. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Kyle and Nick on
Yes, thank
Film.
you.
Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out that Patreon link down below for our 48-minute long discussion where we rank every single
was
Brian
that
De
long?
Palma film. It was absolutely that long. It was arduous. Go watch it, so I know I did a good job. And then you can also check out goatfilmreviews.com, where I've got written reviews of some Western films, as well as a collection of 2025 new releases on that front page.
And check out my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere to find podcasts with new shows arriving, as well as my film reviews, the St. Paul Filmcast.reviews.